nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, before we get started, I would like to offer our condolences to Alderman Gardner. His grandmother, who he's very close to, passed away this week, and he wasn't able to make our meeting last week. She was sick then, and so our condolences to you. Thank you. So, okay, Jay, if you'll do roll call.
Town of Vidalia Board of Aldermen roll call for a special meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen dated December 4th, 2018. Alderman Betts.
Present.
Alderwoman Dorey.
Present.
Alderman Gardner.
Here.
Alderman McCoy. Alderman McCoy is noted to be absent at this time. Alderman Probst.
Here.
Mayor, let the record show a quorum of the board is present.
Okay, we're down in session. Number one on our agenda tonight, we have Rick Nolan with Nolan's and Associates. Those that came to our meeting a few months ago, Rick had given his report. He worked and did, I think, a real good job on doing a rate study for our town, and he's come back. I requested that. There was a question last week as we were trying to adopt our budget that were we finished with it, and I guess he's come to finish it. Or if anybody in the public will have a question of him tonight, or any of the aldermen, of course, we want them. He'll be glad to answer those questions. So at this time, Rick, do you want to just start and then have questions afterwards, or you want to go ahead and more or less just give a summary of what you talked to us about?
I will. I'll try not to be too repetitive, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be back with you. I apologize for my voice. We had a Christmas festival in Natchez last week, and it was cool night air, and I didn't get into about 2 o'clock Sunday morning, so I'm sure that had something to do. We were celebrating, of course, in the right spirit. Yeah, I was here a couple of months ago, and we talked about the rate study. If I repeat some things for some of y'all, I don't mean to bore you to death, but I want to cover some things, and maybe some people here that were not here then. What a utility rate study basically is an analysis of the operations, in a sense, the financial operations of the utilities, not the day-to-day operations, not the hanging of poles or connecting water meters, that sort of thing, but to look at your city budgets, to look at your audits, to look at your various revenue requirements, and to try to determine the level of revenues that you need to operate the department, and then translate and associate that with the rates you're charging to see if it's appropriate. I was contacted by the mayor about performing this study because of his concern and the concern of the council over the cost of utilities in the city, particularly the high cost of the electric utility services. And as we found 6 months ago, or 5 when we started this process, your electric rates here were significantly higher than they were in some other municipalities and from some of the electric cooperatives and the investor-owned utilities. So we undertook a process to try to determine why that was so, what's happening, and we made a number of observations. And I'm cutting this kind of brief, but I'll get into details as necessary based on the questions I receive. One of the first things we noticed is that the utility department funds, that is the enterprise fund of the city of Vidalia, transfers a significant amount of money that's raised in the department out, and it goes to other departments. And we don't make value judgments of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a fact of life. All municipal utilities do it. They only differ in how much they do. The transfers out of the Vidalia Enterprise Fund can vary from $1 million to over $2 million a year. As a percent of revenues, it could range from 10% to 30%. And my experience in dealing with municipal utilities for over 35 years, 10% is fairly normal. 30% is probably on the upper end of what I've seen. But again, that's a decision made by your local mayor and city council, city board of aldermen, excuse me. And they determine what monies are needed in other departments that do not generate their own revenue or generate very little revenue, such as public safety, public works, and what have you. I think we'd all agree that we don't want to force the police department to write enough tickets to pay for all their cost of operations. That wouldn't go over very well. We wouldn't want the fire department to charge to show up at your house if your house was on fire. So we recognize you have to generate money. And you can either do it through fees and charges or taxes or whatever. And that was outside the scope of my study. And so I'm not going to address whether you need to do that or don't do that. I'm just simply pointing out to the mayor and aldermen and those present that you have a high level of transfers going out. And somehow that has to be controlled and to a level that's acceptable to the people of Vidalia. We look at your billing records, and one of the first things we had to do was to try to, in order to say, to examine the rates you have and what rates you need to have, we need to know how any changes we might propose would impact the bottom line for each of the utility departments and for the city as a whole. So we take the billing records made available to us and create a computer model, and I'm not going to go through it. It's a 75 spreadsheet workbook, and I get cross-eyed myself when I look at it, and I'm the one that wrote it. But to say for each rate classification, residential, commercial, what have you, for different levels of consumption, this is what you're paying now. And if we change this rate from A to B by increasing or decreasing a little bit, this is what you would be paying. And then we calculate the number of people at that level to see what the total impact on the city bottom line is. Just a lot of arithmetic, okay? But it's important so that if you're evaluating changes, you'll say, well, it's going to increase or decrease and who it's going to impact. And you need to know that. That's things that this mayor and this council need to know. So that took a couple months to do, just to grind through the numbers on that. As we worked through this, we were getting into the new budget period with the city, and so we couldn't work in a vacuum. We have to know what the city's looking at as far as its budget. And so we worked closely with the city on saying, okay, here's rates we think that would be competitive and still allow you to transfer money out of the department. Excuse me. But we also have to be aware of what type of things the city is putting in their budget, what the revenues, anticipated revenues and expenses are. So we tried to work them very closely together. I mentioned the high electric rates. One other thing that was quite obvious was that the revenues generated by the water and sewer departments, taken as one department, although they're separate departments, but looking at them together because there's a lot of crossover in operations and sometimes expenses, the revenues from water and sewer do not cover the total cost of the water and sewer operations, and its pro rata share of the transfers out of the department, out of the enterprise fund to other departments. And so, and I think it was cited even in your most recent legislative audit that something needs to be done about water and sewer rates to increase them. So we're looking at lower electric cost, higher water and sewer, with the overall goal of having a net lower cost for all utilities, but having each utility sort of stand alone so that each utility is paying its own way. Water and sewer is not subsidizing electricity or being subsidized by the electric department or the gas department or any other. And that's one of the objectives in this study and all similar studies. So we, at the same time, worked with the city on drafting a new utility ordinance. Chapter 38 in your Code of Ordinances addresses utilities. One thing we noted right away, Mayor, is that it's basically silent on a number of issues. Things aren't addressed in the ordinance that are normally addressed, and so they've actually been handled in the past by previous administrations, I guess by policy adopted by the city or in whatever method. But there are certain things that need to be added to the utility ordinance, and we're recommending that you do that, and we can talk about some of those. For example, on the in the electric side, actually in all utilities, it's quite common now for municipalities to have their rate schedules for the different class of customers, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, large industrial, but to also have authorization within the ordinance for the city to enter into utility contracts with very large industries that have some special needs and requirements and may be eligible for economic incentive rates provided to the city from its wholesale supplier of power and energy. So that they make it available to you, then you can pass it through without having to go back and rewrite your ordinance. Those things are legal. They're done in a lot of cities, and that's one thing we would suggest you consider when you get to that point. One of the main things you want to do, though, with the utility ordinance is to lay the ground rules. These are our services. These are the conditions under which we provide them. These are the companies and the businesses to whom we will provide our services, and these are the costs. And what that does is the customers, the people in the businesses, have some understanding that if I consume this much water or this much electricity, this is what I'm going to be paying for it. And it's consistent and it's predictable. Not only helps your people you have now, it helps those that are thinking about moving here, particularly businesses that are thinking about moving here. They want to have some predictability to what their power costs are because they're in a very competitive business environment. The other thing is you want to simplify your billing procedures and your rate structures. Your current electric rates have one factor in the calculation called a static factor that is a little bit unusual. It works, but there are better ways to do it, and I think there are ways to make it simpler so that everybody can look at their bill and say, okay, I know what I'm paying, and I know where the money's going. I know that the city's getting a certain portion because it has staff and bucket trucks and poles and wire and transformers and sewer pumps and the other stuff. And I know how much is going to the wholesale suppliers of the power and energy, that sort of thing. And I think that needs to be clear in your billing. So we've made a number of recommendations to the mayor. He's been very receptive. As we work through this process, the city has actually made changes to your electric rates over the last couple of months. Some of the things we recommended early on have actually been implemented by the city under the policies existing today. But we prefer in your new rate ordinance, when you take it up, and I understand that'll probably be in the first quarter of next year, that you actually put those things in your ordinance so that it doesn't leave it up to one individual or a small group of individuals in administration to decide what you're going to be paying for electricity. It actually brings the Board of Aldermen into the process so that they have a say saying, no, we're for this. We want to charge this rate, or no, we don't want to charge this rate. And I think that's better for the whole community because the city administration is really a team. You have a mayor and you have a Board of Aldermen, and you work best when you work together. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just telling you from my experience. It works better that way. So let me get down to the bottom line first. The mayor, under the policies and programs, procedures existing now, has reduced the electric bills in an amount that on an annual basis would amount to about $1 million a year. He has, I don't think, changed the water and sewer rates, right?
Well, we haven't changed the rates per se as we did the electricity, but it is built into the
But
it is built into this
I'm
new
getting,
budget.
that's a good point, yes. In order to put the water and sewer departments in a self-sufficient standalone mode and to meet the other requirements of those departments, we're recommending an increase overall in the revenue there, which means the rates you pay of about $300,000. So you have $1 million in savings on the electric side and about $300,000 increase on the water and sewer, and so the net savings to the customers is about, on an annual basis, about $700,000 a year. Since your rate ordinance is not going to be adopted the first of the year, those numbers will shift a little bit. The savings will go down, but the cost increases will go down based on how many months are left in the fiscal year. The important thing you remember is that you need to start with a budget, and I'm excited to see it on the agenda tonight. I didn't realize it was on the agenda till I got here, so I won't push that too hard. But you need your budget because you're setting the rules right there. This is your guideline. One thing I can tell you about a budget is at the end of the year you're going to look back and you didn't meet it exactly because nobody has a crystal ball, but you work with the best information you have, and as the need arises during the year, this council can amend the budget. You've done that before and you'll probably do it again. But you need to know how much money you need to operate your departments, hence how much money what your expenses are, then what your revenues need to be to cover your expenses and your transfers out of the utility departments. And then using that revenue, you can say, okay, what are the utility rates we have to generate that revenue? And I want you to know that the proposed fiscal year 2018-2019 budget that was prepared by the mayor was made available, and his staff, was made available to me, and we used that in coming up with our proposed rate increases. So they were developed concurrently together, so that if you adopt the budget, we basically have that budget. That budget is based on, it locks in the $1 million cut in electric rates, but it also includes the $300,000 increase in the water and sewer rates. Right, Mayor? Okay. One other comment, when you get to your electric rate ordinance, we're recommending that the total cost of wholesale power and energy, including transmission losses to get it to the city of Vidalia, be accounted for in the power cost adjustment on your bill. Under the present system, a part of it is, and a part of it's in your base rate. So when you pay your base rate, you're not only paying for your local expenses, you're paying for part of the wholesale power and energy, and it's not real clear. So in the interest of transparency and clearness and allowing people to be able to understand what they're paying for and who's actually getting the money, we think that change doesn't change what you'll be paying for your electric power, but it makes it a whole lot easier to calculate, a whole lot easier to explain, and a whole lot easier to see where the money is actually going. And I think I'll stop there, Mayor. Again, I'm happy to see that the budget's on the agenda. I know that's a very tough thing. I know you must be having problems with it because we're well into the fiscal year. But once that's done, and we lock in those rates, whatever revenues you have, now if you add a lot of expense to the budget, or you make a lot of changes to the budget, we'll have to go back and tweak the rates some because, you know, they have to be considered together. And with that, I'll answer any questions you or the board may have first, and then the audience if you wish.
Council, any questions of Mr. Nollins?
In your study, you said that some departments, you know, that we range between 10% and 30% transfers into departments. Which departments are receiving that higher end, that 30%?
Well, let me explain. The 10 to 30% was not to different departments. It was over a period of years that I looked at it. So I looked at back 5 or 6 years. And some years it was down in the 10, 15 range, and I think one year it was up nearly 30%. Once the money goes out, if you follow through your audit, it goes in and out of departments, okay? And but you know the departments, you have Public Works. Has to have funds. Public safety has to have funds, okay? You may have a situation, and it would not surprise me, that Parks and Recreation has to have some funds. They're not totally self-sufficient. And so, and what you're doing there is done all over.
Right.
The question is, how much do you do? How much do you take out of the enterprise or utility fund to do that before it becomes a strain, before the utility payers are paying so much that it puts the city in a bad situation compared to other cities and their utilities, not only for the cost of living here in the city, but for economic development purposes. So once it leaves the enterprise fund, the city budget, it spreads out to all these various departments. And I've offered no comments on whether it's so much to go here, so much to go there. That's really outside the scope of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I will say, and on a few occasions I've had to work with utilities that were involved in investor-owned utilities such as Entergy and CLECO and others before the Public Service Commission. And they generally, the Public Service Commission takes rate hike or rate change requests annually, and those utilities generally request, because of their requirements for their return on investment to maintain a going business, something in the range anywhere from 12, 13, maybe even 15, 16% before tax. So let's say 15%, 14, 15%. Well, municipal utilities, you're a non-taxable situation, so you don't need a 15% return. You don't. Your stockholders, in effect, are these people right here. Okay, so if you can add a little to the utility cost to cover, more or less as a dividend, to cover these other departments like Public Works and Public Safety and Parks and Recreation. That's accepted in the community as the way, that's what part of the way of doing business. And the only concern I have is when you, if it gets to be so much, then you say, okay, maybe we need another way of financing those departments. I don't know. Again, that's a value judgment. If the mayor and board of aldermen and the council and the people, in the city and the businesses in the city don't mind paying a 20% premium on the utilities to fund the other departments, and everybody's happy, I'm happy. I'm not going to try to, I want the peace and harmony prevail. So I just point out that it is on the high end of what the other municipalities do. And I'm sorry about the long answer, but
No, that's fine. Where are we now? What percentage, based on the study that you did in the current fiscal year, what percentage of transfers do we have?
I'll have to refer to your budget. Excuse me just a second.
Okay.
I didn't bring all my files. I wrote out 10% of them. Okay. For the proposed budget, 2018, 2019, the level of transfers is around $2.1 million out of a enterprise total, all utilities together, of a little over $12 million. So it's just under 20%, which is lower than it has been in some years, a little higher than it has been in others. I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head. I've looked at a lot of numbers here lately, so
Oh, no, I didn't
I don't want to
expect
take a
you to.
chance of giving you a bad number.
No, I didn't expect you to.
Any other questions from council?
Yes. When we first met you, you made this statement that we have too many amenities. As a matter of fact, it was the main glad to meet you statement that you had in the thing. After looking over everything now, are you willing to tell us what's too many amenities?
Mr. McCoy, yeah, I may have said that. What I intended to say was you have a high level of programs and facilities. When I look at, I'm very impressed with your recreational facilities. I'm very impressed with the development along the riverbank and others. This is a good-looking, progressive, active community, but all of those things cost money, and that's what I'm saying. I didn't intend to say you have too many, because that's a value judgment that I can't make. You may not have enough in your mind, and that's okay too. So what I'm saying is you provide a lot to your citizens, and a lot of that appears to be funded out of the enterprise fund. And I'm just strictly calling it to your attention that you may want to consider other ways of funding that. I think one of my earlier comments was that, you know, if you decide you're going to limit this 2.1 million to say 1.5 million, that's $600,000 these other areas are not getting. You either got to come up with $600,000 in other revenue, or you got to make $600,000 in cuts, or you got to do a little bit of both. And that's, again, that's outside the scope of what I'm doing here. So I didn't mean to imply that you have too much in the way of programs and facilities. I'm simply saying you're funding a high level of those activities out of the enterprise fund, higher than normal.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What rates were used?
When we start, I used just existing city rates when we started,
Uh-huh.
and as we got into this, the mayor made adjustments to the rates. What he did was basically reduce the calculation for the power cost by 1.6 cents in round numbers per kilowatt hour. And one of the things I may have failed to mention this time was that on the electric rates, the emphasis was on reducing the residential rates, and if possible the others, but But what we did was we focused all of the reductions on the residential side with the idea we're not going to increase anybody's electrical rate, but we're going to put the savings, we're going to give the savings back to the individual customers.
So, at the beginning of your study, what was the average residential electric rate? Do you have that?
Yes.
Okay.
4 or 5 case studies back. Okay.
Bless your heart.
Let me just say, in round numbers, you had residential customers, depending on their level of consumption, because somebody uses 500 kilowatt hours a month, wasn't as paying as much in total bill as somebody using 3,000 kilowatt hours, but they were paying more per kilowatt hour because of your declining block structure, where the
Right.
first block is more expensive and it drops as it goes on. But overall, on an average, you had an average of about 1,100 kilowatt hours per month per customer, residential. And the rates were somewhere up in the 13-cent range, okay?
Okay.
12 and a half, 13, in that range. And now, with the changes the mayor's made, it's down closer to 11 cents.
11
So, and depending on your consumption, I'd just say 10 and a half to 11 and a half range, which is much more competitive.
Okay. And now tell me about water. What did it go from and to, based on your study?
Okay. Your water rates, of course, in water and sewer, you charge the same for both. So when I'm talking about the rates for one, I'm talking, under your existing rates, for the first 4,000 gallons was 49.1 cents per 100 gallons, so say $4.91 a 1,000 gallons, okay? And then the next block was 16,000 gallons, and it dropped to 97 cents per 1,000 gallons. Okay, now I don't know of a utility that can produce water for less than $2 a 1,000 gallons unless it's some little water well at the farm, okay? And then the next block, it jumps back up to $1.36 a 1,000 gallons. I've tried to figure that one out, I'm sorry, Mayor, I couldn't, you know. It's expensive, then it's cheap, then it's expensive again. The only thing I could figure is you wanted to have an expensive first block so that everybody paid for the cost of service, and then it got cheaper, and then if you consume too much, you're going to pay a lot more again. But that's speculation on my part. But when only the first 4,000 cost more than $1.36, you're losing money, and you're not going to make it up on volume. The rates that we're talking about is for the first 4,000 of actually $5 a 1,000, then going to $3.10, and then to $2, and leveling off at $2. With the idea that at some point you're going to, on the first couple of blocks, you're going to make the cost of serving, the lines, the meters, the meter reading, sending out the bills, and that sort of thing. And after that, you're just simply charging for the water, which is the $2 level. Now, if you look at the information provided to you, that $300,000 represents in total utility fund, enterprise fund revenue, about 2.65%. But on water and sewer, it's a jump of 27%.
Right.
Okay? But it's the smaller part of the total pie, smaller slice, so that even with the $300,000 increase in water sewer, you're still getting a $700,000 savings because of the cut in the residential electric rates.
One of the things, Rick, that when we were doing this and looking at the water, you know, that was one of the things the legislative auditor said. You can't have a utility actually losing money. It has to support itself. And what we wanted to do is basically make water and sewer break even. And what we did was we took the number of units that we have. I think it's around 2,400. Mark, is that right? Probably customers, 2,400. You take 300,000, divide that by that amount, and then divide it by 12 months. You're looking at maybe a total cost to your water bill and sewer somewhere in the neighborhood, anywhere from $10 to $20 a month. So, but it's significantly more savings for you on your electricity side with what we're doing. So, and I'd just like to make a comment. What Rick's saying is, with these things that we do, it's in the budget that we've got. Of course, we're almost through with half a year on what the water is. So we've lost probably, 5 months because we haven't adjusted the rates to reflect that. We did go ahead and reflect the electric rate to reflect it, to where you go ahead and start getting the savings. I know on my personal bill, now my last one was back up to 11 cents, but the 2 previous months, my electricity rate was 10.2 cents a kilowatt. Y'all, I'm telling you, Rick would tell you that's a good rate, and that's based on usage. My usage is around 3,500, anywhere to 4,000 kilowatts a month. But, I also have property in Faraday. I've checked bills, Energy of Mississippi. I've checked Energy of Louisiana. I've checked Concordia Electric. Their rates, I haven't found them coming in anywhere under 13 cents. So when I'm thinking, these are power companies. The only thing they are doing is supplying their customers power, and that's it. Y'all, City of Vidalia is bringing you that amount of service at that cost right now. And they're also giving you fire protection, police protection, street lights, and all the things, all that's coming out of that. So when, the amenities, but I tell you what, I think we've done an incredible job on getting our budget down, which this budget, from the time we took over, and it's in the numbers here, and anybody, that wants to come, I get beat up because, you want to always talk about, come to your office. Well, where else are you going to get the information if you don't come to our office? Where are you going to get the information? I'll be glad to give it to you. Completely open. So if you say that I got to come to your office to get something, I don't know where else you're going to go get it to get the truth, okay? So all I'm saying is come in and we'll show it to you. We are operating the town. When you back out our operational expense, we're operating this town from the time we take over in just a little over 2 years, $5 million a year. Well, and I feel like we're doing a better job, providing better services. We're doing things, and look at the positive things going on in our town. We were given 2 empty buildings coming into this thing and expenses that we've overcome. Now we've got 2 businesses coming here. We've got activity all over. We are blessed. We are really blessed, and I'm encouraged about our future. The port's coming on. Wiley and his crew and all those are coming on. We've got a bright future. And there's more businesses that I can't talk about coming that are kicking the tires on Vidalia, and it's going to be really good for us. So,
Mayor, I think that's a good point, is that when you look at your utility bill, it's not just the utilities, you're getting other services, so it's not really an apples to apples comparison. The other thing, as far as the water and sewer, the proposed rate increases would amount to roughly $6 a month each for water and sewer, or $12 a month is what on an average customer.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to make one more comment because this is important, and I think it's real important this time. Because I've gotten beaten up about our utility rates and blah, blah. It's been pretty bad. There were some other things that we've taken on that some of you've never been here before that I didn't know when I was running for office. When I came in the office, the town owns 10.3% of a $100+ million power generating plant called LEPA No. 1 down in Morgan City, okay? That plant, guess when the note started on that plant, plus what the town had to start sending a check for the operation of that plant? I think it was June of 2016 when we took office. So those costs, when people say, well, we're getting the highest utility bill we've ever had, guess what? I didn't know it, but we started getting handed a bill each month for over $100,000 on the note for LEPA No. 1 and also the operational costs on it. You got to pay it or you go dark. You got to pay it. We're obligated to it. The town was obligated under the previous administration for this, and we have overcome that, and by reducing costs and doing our work, we have gotten where we're under control and we're very competitive on our rates. Has it been easy? No, it has not. But I want to say this because this is something Rick's talked about. They talk about public safety, and I'm going to say this. Our public safety is, they've done a per capita deal, and Rick will tell you for a lot of municipalities our size, your per capita for your public safety, which is fire and police, is somewhere from anywhere from $175 to probably $200. Vidalia's is over $1,000 we're paying. Now, guess what? I don't want you to think I'm against that. Here's what I'm saying. If you're happy with your police department and the size of it, and the fire department and what we get for that money, I'm all for it. But don't complain about the utility bill up here and blast me for our utility rate if we're going to maintain that big of a public safety budget. So all I'm saying is, if you look, I'm happy with where we're at as a town. Look, we're safe, relatively safe. We got great police protection. We had meetings today all day. We're hoping to maybe lower our fire rating. I'm hoping. We're all working together as trying to do these things. We're doing your work, and we're doing it, and we're conscious. I want you to come into the office. I want everybody to come in and sit down, and I'll be glad to show it to you. I'll be glad to show you the work we've done. And I don't know how much I can advertise that. And for somebody to say that they got to come to your office to get information, why not hold public meetings? If it's something, a public meeting, or this council meeting, we have these meetings to take care of the business. If it requires action, come here, and if it's something that we deem we can't answer your questions, and we feel like it's something that desires a meeting that needs to be discussed, we'll put it on the agenda and talk about it. But it's got to be something that's going to require action, but let's talk about it before we get to it. So, just like this rate study he's done, I think Rick's done a good job. He's well respected all through. I didn't know that, Rick, but people know you all over. Found that out last night.
I don't tell them where I'm from.
But anyway, he's done a good job, and he's willing to work with us. But anyway, I just want to say that I'm really encouraged about the future of our town. I'm happy what we've done in 2 years, a little over 2 years, and it's only going to get better. So.
Now, I got a little bit to say, because I ran as an alderman for this town, and I didn't promise lower utilities because I knew that there wasn't a possibility for lower utilities without doing certain things, as Rick is mentioning. Correct, Rick? Mm-hmm. To get lower utilities, what do you have to do? You have to give up something, or live with what you got and pay the higher utility. I agree with you on that. Now, where do we stand? You, the residents of Vidalia, I catch calls a lot of times. My utility bill's out of sight. I'm up here fighting to get them lowered, doing what I can to get them lowered. Public safety, in a meeting we had here, we want more public safety. He said that's higher. That's what we heard in a meeting. Many times we've heard different things from you, the residents. Rick's telling us what we got to do to get where we want to be is to lower what? You got to lower something. You can't get the lower rates because he said you got Unit 1. Or whatever he's got that he didn't know about. I didn't make that promise. I didn't know about Unit 1, but I knew about the way this power was bought and sold and how it was. He ran on that. I didn't. I ran to get you what you want as far as citizens of Vidalia. And also to obey what we have as ordinances in the city of Vidalia, because that's what they're written for. I didn't write them. They put them in place. They put those ordinances in place, because there's a lot of y'all here today that are wanting to say those ordinances don't need to be obeyed. And that's just like breaking the law. And if that's the way you feel, let them all go. I'm just sitting that out as a starter. Rick, in your opinion, what do you think we need to do to be able to lower the rates if we're going to get them there? You said we either had to pass a tax or do something different.
Well, if, Mr. Probst, yeah, I can answer.
No, order. Please. Okay, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah. The two biggest components in your utility cost, one is the embedded cost in providing the utility service. There's not a lot you can do when probably 60% or 65% of that cost is in your wholesale power and energy.
Right.
So you're working on roughly a third of the cost.
Correct.
That's your men and your bucket trucks and the equipment and your sewer pumps and all the other stuff. The other cost is the transfers out of the enterprise fund. And that's what we were talking about earlier. At 2.1 million, doesn't sound like a lot of money, but that's a lot of money every year to come out. And that's a premium your people pay and apparently been willing to pay in order to have these other services.
Right.
Again, it's a value judgment. I don't want to get into that because that's an argument. I don't care what side I'm going to lose, okay? So it's something you have to look at and say, if we're going to have this level of public safety, public works, street lighting, and all the other stuff, somebody's got to pay for it, okay? My personal opinion is that the utility costs should be limited to the cost of providing utility services with a small override. And again, most of the cities I work with deal with 7 to 10%. okay? But if you have to go over the other, that's a decision you make as a body. The majority will rule on that. When you adopt your budget, you'll include that in your budget, and you move on. That's what you do.
Right.
I have not looked at the other departments to say, we can cut back here, we can cut back there. That was beyond the scope, and I'm more comfortable dealing with utilities than I am some of these other departments.
But surely, the mayor made the statement about public safety. If these people aren't safe, the rest of this is null and void. We don't even need to talk about it. We have to keep the citizens safe. And if there's no premium on life, you know, we can't dumb it down or find a median pay that we're willing to do to make sure that these citizens are safe. And I don't really, I know he didn't mean to say if you want it, you gotta pay for it. You gotta pay a little more. We got that. But public safety, that's off the table. You don't talk about, we're gonna cut this here. We're gonna cut, I think we're probably about 3 police officers short here right now. And as far as if my loved one, or if the mayor's loved one, anybody's loved one needed assistance from fire department, police department, it ain't a price tag on that. So let's take that part of the discussion out. And admittedly, you didn't look into other departments. You didn't look into police and fire and
Not
say-
their internal operations, no.
Yeah, so your study and your information that you're giving us, it's not like you visited and checked on all that. So fire and police, that's off the table. But there's some other things that we probably could do a little better. And I think the citizens, if they knew, and the mayor, Mr. Kraft, claims that he's transparent in everything. There's no transparency with this board because we've been told in front of those of you who come to this meeting, I can't tell you right now, but it's a great thing that's coming, and because of confidentiality, I can't tell you. Well, we can't tell y'all. We can't tell the citizens. We don't know the terms and conditions of, we found out last week that a Natchez company is handling $8 million of the city of Vidalia's money, drawing interest off $8 million. Now, you got transparency. Somebody ought to explain that to the people. I bet you if we had that $8 million sitting in a bank or somewhere drawing interest, that's probably about $400,000 or $500,000 you could cut off of this budget because you deal with your own interest, handle your own money. We got top heavy on some things that these people really don't care about. They're here for the show. They want to know what's going to affect them every day, how they live. We're going to go down on your electricity, going up on your water and your gas. That's a trade-off.
Water and sewer, but the net effect is a reduction.
Yeah, but it's just a line item on their bill. All they're seeing is a decrease in electricity, up on your water and sewer, up on your.
Mr. McCoy, as we said, the decrease in electric costs is much greater than the increase, over twice the increase in
I got
water.
it. I got it.
Well, the way you were saying it, with all due respect, you sound like it was going to be a wash. It's not a wash.
No, it's going to be far
Yes, sir.
from. It's going to be far from a wash.
Okay,
I
I
got
didn't
it.
want to give that impression if I did.
No, but these people don't. They don't care about the little things.
I didn't.
You can't. Okay. Have you seen this budget? Okay, see, that's what I just said.
Okay,
You don't care.
wait.
This is the largest budget that the city has ever seen, and for whatever reason, the first thing that's gonna happen, if this budget isn't approved, the people that cost the city the least are gonna be affected the most. Now, watch what I tell you. If this budget is not approved, there'll be a threat to not pay streets and the people who pick up the trash, the people who do whatever. That's gonna be the first thing that happens. That bothers me. That bothers me.
Okay, can I,
I'm not gonna field any questions.
No.
I'm making a statement concerning to
It's not a question
Mr.
about
Nolan.
that. My question is, when he was reading off the rates that customers are paying for electricity, and we have this second bracket that is paying less than what it costs to make electricity, or to even sell electricity to us as the customers, why is that not one of the first things that's being directed at? Why make bracket number one pay more for electricity because they're using less? Bracket number two is gonna come in and they're gonna pay less than what electricity is actually costing. And then we have bracket three, bracket four, bracket five, however far we're gonna go. Why don't we adjust things like that? That's gonna be more revenue because we're not giving something away for free.
go ahead, Rick,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
respond to.
Maybe I wasn't clear. That was when we were talking about the water and sewer rates, when the second bracket was 97 cents.
Yes.
Yeah, when it's not even half enough to cover it. And our proposal is to increase that above the cost of production, and that increase is calculated in the budget that we'll be considering tonight.
That is, okay.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to address Alderman McCoy's comments, because he made several there, and he's, you know, one of the things that when we were talking about economic development, when you're courting a company, you know, and Heather can tell you, she's our economic director, she can tell you how important confidentiality is. And when you're dealing with customers, because guess what? We're not the only ones after companies to come in and provide our kids, ourselves, jobs for our future. And those things are very, very important. And I have proof, that Alderman McCoy and some of the council were actually fighting against, and I can prove that if I have to, Alderman McCoy, because especially Project Blue, I have emails that's being requested to cancel the contract on Project Blue, which we have closed, and they are already beginning to bring in materials that we have found that when we did include what information was got, it was taken and turned around to more or less fight this administration to bring in economic development. So if it was a cloud of secrecy, I'm sorry, but we landed these two businesses here, and we had to fight very hard for it. And I would do it again. I wouldn't change anything I did in this whole process, because I did get the calls of people threatening to not show up to come do what they had to do for us to finish this task. The other thing, as far as the largest budget, I'm disappointed in you being an alderman since May of 2005 and can't understand why this budget number total isn't more. Yes, it is got the largest number, but operationally, it is the lowest that it was during your term, which I will point out that when you take off the port and you take off the payment on the loan, we're way under any previous budget, Alderman McCoy.
Not way under.
Well, we're under, yes, we are. We are under. And so since you started, you went and.
You continue to go back
No,
to
I'll let you talk,
the
and
past.
I'll let you
These
talk.
people need to know what's happening moving forward. What are we gonna do now? What are we doing for the people?
We just, and see, that's what gets me. You didn't hear what I said to the people a while ago. Our rates are very competitive with protection. I'm not asking to cut these things if the people are okay with this level of what the utility rate is. Did you not hear me say that?
Did you not hear me say that that's off the table? There's no compromise on that.
So, anyway, all right. Any other questions from the public to,
I got a question.
okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I think that you should eventually hold a town hall. That way you can hear some of our rights, and we can hear some of the information that you're talking about more direct.
Okay, and that's not a problem. But look, you're and Joe, you're welcome to come in. Any questions you've got?
Well, I've been to your office and
Okay.
I've seen you on the street.
And-
And I've suggested that several times. with the department heads, et cetera, so they can hear from the public.
Well, I mean,
That's where I was going up
again, we're here,
there. Again? Yes.
That's a grown man. Whatever his opinion is, he
okay, let's,
he got it.
hey, look, let's keep, or, really, look, let's keep this one person speaking at a time. And look, I'll have a town hall, that's fine, we will, and I've had them before, and we've talked about some things, and as far as some plans, and we will, you know, I don't mind doing that and discussing all aspects of the town. Now, tonight, we're still on the agenda item number about with our rate study. Huh?
When? Before you pass the budget or after you pass the budget?
That's a different, we gotta address the budget tonight, Mr. McCoy, I appreciate it.
There will be a public hearing regarding the budget, however.
Here in a few minutes.
One other thing I want to say is this, in the reference that you made in the past about the lower utility rates right now, you do know up until December, I think you made the statement, December, you had to do the different static factor because you lost $2.5 million.
It was over an 18-month period or 16-month period. We had given, which y'all kept saying
You
that
gave it back.
it was over $2 million that the town didn't have in revenues. It did not go in your utility bills from September of 2016 when we first got in office till December 2017.
And we had to make that, we had to do something to get that money back. But again, as of December, our rates went, and I saw bills because I had people call me. I told them to calculate their kilowatt hour, and some of them were anywhere from 16 to 14 to unbelievable and high bills. If we've done this now, what's going to take it and make it not happen again since you've done that static factor? That's the scary, and that's what you were talking about, that static factor adjustment that you were saying for them to adjust that, correct?
Yeah.
Is fearful to the citizen who has a bill set and then they get a $700 or I saw some $1,400 bills. And again, I'm not saying that was our fault, their fault, anybody. If they may have had a bad insulated house, bad whatever, I don't know. But they were huge. And I had calls about those, many calls. But what's going to protect us from having that happen again and the losses that we had, and if that rate is lowered to that point, again, without adjusting something else that brings us revenue to overtake that.
The outlier on those times, and look, there was some back when we had, explain what happened in January with electricity. What even happened in your parish? Rick, what happened to the cost during January and December of last year when we had the extremely cold weather? What happened to your?
Oh, yeah, it went up, especially people with electric heat, it was horrible. You know, I appreciate Alderman Probst's concerns and comments. The fact that you have this static factor calculation in your power cost adjustment calculation is a little bit, it's beneficial when you have to make sort of an emergency or short-term adjustment. You can do it without having to go through a revision to your ordinance. But on the other hand, the other side of that coin is that it's done administratively, and that's expedient, but it's also doesn't include the body in the deliberative process. And the mayor feels, he's made it very clear to me, he wants all 5 aldermen involved in any ordinance or ordinance revision that involves charges to the people. You know, that's not something he wants to do single-handedly, and I commend him for that. That's the way it's done in just about every other city. The Board of Aldermen or the City Council determines what the rates are. And they do that as part of the budgeting process. I would recommend that once you pass your rate ordinance, you don't put it on the shelf or give it to the billing office and forget about it. These things need to be reviewed at least every 2 years because prices change, conditions change, and if you don't, you get in a situation like one of my other clients, I can't call their name or I'll be fired, but they didn't change their rates for 25 years, and then they needed a 45% rate increase. And they got it, and the mayor went home, you know, but you need to do it periodically so that you stay on top of the situation, whether it's going up or going down. But as you most know, things very seldom go down. And So I think my comments about simplifying the procedure, making it easier to understand, easier to implement, has to do with making sure you've got two parts of your electric bill. You've got the part that covers your local expenses and the part that covers your wholesale that comes to us from outside the city. And there ought to be a wall between them so that people can clearly see what it is. And you can only deal with the local expenses. When you negotiate these long-term power contracts on these power plants, you're locked in usually for 20 years or more. Yeah. But there are some things happening. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. I know. I'm not going to miss it. I'll let you do it. But, you know, it's a tough situation for y'all. I'm not going to underestimate. And I appreciate Councilman McCoy's comments. Certain things are off the table, okay? And he may feel that way, and all of you may feel that way. And I may feel that way. But I know when I addressed my parish council back in Natchez Parish, when we were talking about the budget, everything is on the table when you start the discussion. And then as you go through, certain things get off the table, okay? And that's just, it's more of a process of how you handle your budget adoption process. You know, you're going to have a public hearing. That's going to come out. I'm going to try to stay for some of it, maybe all of it, who knows? But I'm not going to be here all night. I'm sorry. I know I've got, tomorrow morning, I start interviewing 21 applicants for the new registrar of voters in the parish, and it's going to take me, I've got 2 weeks to interview 21 people, so I'm going to leave here before midnight.
Okay.
And you promised me I'd be out of here by midnight, man.
I did.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Rick before we move on to agenda item number 2?
I do.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
A year ago, you know, and just to state this right here, I appreciate you bringing all the business in, all that stuff, but, for all the businesses traveling to the airport, we talked about this about a year ago, that road, that's, you know, you didn't do it, the last person did, but that road is messed up. And I just wanted to see if we're gonna get something done with it, to make it easier for airports and bring businesses in, somebody build a house up.
I agree. It is going to get done. Now, look, there's been more pressing issues. Things have been tight budget-wise.
I understand, I just
And
wanted
look,
to, or if I could help donate to it.
well, no, look, we're talking about a lot of things back, for example, with Denham coming in and Syra coming in. Ralph Abraham told me that he would like to see us and work with us on getting some funding for also extending the airport, because they're thinking that, you know, some of the big players as far as automobile manufacturers are going to start looking. And we think, now this is just what he said, and he,
That's how I got torqued last time, but we didn't work on the airport. I don't know how
yeah.
to do it.
Well, I'm sure they would fix that, but
Roll
anyway.
it up, I'll pay for Curtis to go out there and roll it up, and figure out now.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, but look, come see me. I'll tell you who we've talked to and things that we're rolling around. It's going rather than go in and patch it and just throw away money on patching, we want to fix it right and make sure it's right. Okay, and yeah, it does need attention. We're trying to maintain it. I go over it pretty regular just to make sure, you know, you're not going to fly over it going 50 miles an hour, you know. But anyway, but I appreciate your comments. Okay, Ms. Dora?
The mayor mentioned that a cost per citizen for public safety. What was that number again?
It was a little over $1,000.
Somewhere in the order of $1,000 per capita, yeah.
Okay.
He did
You know,
that. He
and
did
when
that.
you look at those numbers, and I think the mayor would tell you, the cost per capita in Vidalia is higher than it is some other cities. But you have to go behind the numbers. There may be reasons why it's higher, that
Right.
people may expect a higher level of protection. Thinking about local police protection is kind of like, to me, thinking about national defense. How much is enough? I don't know, but I know I want it, okay? And then two, you know, your proximity to a larger city across the river might have some influence on your needs. Your relationships with other government entities in the parish or the city. You may be providing services that are not normally provided. Maybe you're not. I don't know. Again, I didn't get into the day-to-day operations, so yeah, the numbers are important, but the facts behind the numbers are also important about the population.
Okay. And when you're doing that study, were you using the 2010 census?
No,
You're using current?
I was using, I think it was a 2016, I think the numbers were provided by the, every year there's a group up at Louisiana Tech that does adjustments, and I believe that was the census data I used. I used the same source for all the cities in the study. There are 4 or 5 different ones you can use, and the numbers change. One of them may say Vidalia has 4,180 residents, the other may say 4,213, but
Right.
I can't account for those differences, but I used the same study for all the cities. And so whatever it is, it is. The
Does-
differences were minor.
Does about 7,600 per capita sound right?
70, total government cost? If you say so, I didn't look at it.
That's, because what I did is I did look at that, all cities across Louisiana. And I looked at the total expenses minus the port. So with total expenses of 33 million, we're looking at $7,685 per person.
You got the hydro, you take out the hydro?
No, I looked at the expenses minus the port, and on everyone else, all of the other, like New Orleans was the very next one in line with $1 million budget for expenses. Their expense per capita is 2,800.
You gotta take into consideration hydroelectric plant.
It's another one of those facts behind the numbers.
You got a $9 million
It was
expense
different
right
whether you
there
have
in
a utility,
hydroelectric
electric
plant where
utility,
buy
you don't
power
have
you're
electric
under
utility.
contract to buy.
So
That power, 6% of what hydroelectric, so other towns don't have to write a check for $9 million to buy 6% of the production of the hydroelectric plant. So no, those are skewed. That's not a good number.
Okay.
Sorry, that's just not. I mean, do you see what I'm saying, Rick?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And you did not calculate, and that's why I asked the professional, that's why I asked you, did you calculate that number for Vidalia?
No, I didn't.
What the cost was?
Total government cost per capita, I did not, no.
Okay. So how did we determine the cost for the public safety per person?
I took the cost of the combined public safety budgets and divided it by the population.
That's the only one you looked at,
Yes.
was public safety. You didn't go any further past that.
I may have looked at a few other departments, but offhand, I can't recall. I know I didn't do the total city,
You did
Once
some,
I had-
you did some on general and admin, and you did do some on
I
recreation.
did some on the,
You did
the
some.
general administrative,
Did
but.
you should have
but
got that. I
Again,
mean,
that wasn't my focus. I just did it out of curiosity.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Rick, before we move on?
May I say
Yeah,
something?
sure.
I apologize. I failed to mention the most important thing, and that is tonight I have with me Beverly Barnum over here. Beverly came with me because she didn't want me driving late at night. Beverly's been I can't tell you how long she's been with me, but it's been a long time. She started when she was 6. No, no, she's been the hub of my office for 39 years.
Wow.
And I couldn't get by without her. And I thank you, Beverly. I just want y'all to know that.
Okay, later on during our discussion, you're welcome if you have a comment or anything, Rick. 'Cause we
I'll
will.
try not to say much, Beverly,
Okay,
unless
all
I
right.
think it's really adds something.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the work you've done. Item number 2 is the current status of the town of Vidalia's financial position as related to RS 391312, which basically is the statute, what we're operating now as far as a budget. And I'm going to read it because it's short. It says, the governing authority's failure to make appropriation, which is adopting a budget. If at the end of any fiscal year, the appropriations necessary for the support of the political subdivision for the ensuing year have not been made, then 50% of the amounts appropriated in the appropriation ordinance or resolution for the last completed fiscal year shall be deemed reappropriated for the several objects and purposes specified in the appropriation ordinance or resolution. So basically what that's saying, we're operating on 50% of our last year's appropriations. And Deborah, did you want to make a comment at that point?
Only that the sheets that we provided to the alderman states, gives that 50% limitation amount, and it also shows where we were at the end of November, and it's not final numbers or anything like that, and it tells us how much dollars we have remaining and also the percentage remaining. So it shows that, we are going to be running out of time if we don't get a budget passed. It's not a threat, it is a fact that, we can't continue to operate you know, for the whole year based on 50% of the previous adopted budget. That's-
Okay, any questions from the Alderman?
And that would only be in the general fund and the special revenue funds. It does not apply to the enterprise funds, which is the utility department.
Okay. Now, we're moving on to number 3, and I'm going to entertain a motion to go into public hearing on the ordinance adopting the operating budget of revenues and expenses for the town of Vidalia, Louisiana for the fiscal year 2018-19. Do I hear that motion?
I so move.
Alderman Dorway, second by Alderman McCoy, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're in public hearing, and this is a chance for the public. If you have a question, raise your hand. You'll be recognized, and you can speak or ask questions about the budget. And so, this is your chance to ask questions or comment if you have a question.
Well, I'd like to know, people that vote for, why don't they vote for it? They tell me the reason why you don't like the budget, or why you do like the budget, or something there you don't want or do want. You gotta pay our bills. And it's kind of,
I asked for 2 things last week to be considered, but I never got consideration. That's only this year. In the past, we got no consideration. We've made no concessions to this budget in 2 years we've been in office. We've given him the budget both years with not one concession, not one, that I know of.
I don't know.
I asked for 2 the other day to be considered and got no consideration as far, I'm just saying they were expounded upon, but no consideration to those things that I asked for. That's 2 things. That was just the 2 that I asked for. But we'll continue. I'm just saying that's one reason that I wasn't gonna pass that budget at that point, along with the rate study.
Yeah, is it something we could maybe ask them now, or ask?
Well, we're gonna get into that in just a minute.
Randy, what did you ask? You said, what was your question, Randy? You had a question?
Me?
Yeah, I did.
Well, I was just wondering what it was and why it was such a showstopper, you know? And you don't have to tell.
Well, because I'm gonna represent them in a few minutes when we get into the budget. I will represent what I asked.
It might be something that you could talk about, but if not, that's fine.
I mean, we'll talk about it. I talked about it last time.
I just do want a budget so we can get on. We
I want a budget.
We don't get these companies here.
I want a budget.
Get these people hired, and that's what we need to be concentrating on.
But this budget's not gonna happen with that, Randy. The budget's not gonna make those people get hired.
I understand that too.
I mean, we want the companies too, just like everybody does, but we also want to be,
One talk at a time. One talk at a time. Go ahead, Randy. And then,
I'm excited about getting this budget done, and I just thought that maybe if you could get together. I mean, we just need to get this thing done.
that's what I like to do. That's what you call work, as he said, we work together. We work together. We work together.
Right, exactly.
I'm gonna meet with you every night too, so don't get mad at me.
I hear you. I am. I'm not. I'm just saying, let's work together. That's
I
right.
understand that, but I didn't know if it was a big problem or something small.
Well, I presented a couple of things last week. I didn't think they were big, major, huge, but they were consideration.
Is this something that you can continue to work on and work with Bud and try to get these things done? Or is it just,
I've been working on this for about 2 years.
okay,
The one of them I asked about,
okay,
about 2 years.
fair enough,
And he knows what I'm talking about.
fair enough.
And I never got into consideration. Did somebody say something? We will when we get into budget discussions.
all right. Any other public comment? Anybody, any question? Okay, Ms. Parnell?
Could you ask people to keep their voices low? We can't hear back here.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Well, then you vote from.
Please, yeah. Okay, anybody raise your hand, have a question or comment? Because we will bring you a mic if you want, so you can hear well. Any other questions?
What are we discussing? So,
Well, this is any question you might have on the budget. I mean, it's been out for public view for now, I guess, a little over 3 weeks, I think, total. And it's been available for anybody to look over, and if they have questions, you could, bring them to your meeting and ask them.
Let me ask
Okay,
you
okay,
one more question.
okay.
I don't know, is the budget supposed to be in a certain box? I mean, whenever you get a budget ready, it's got parameters, and you stay in those parameters, and that's what makes you think this is a good budget. Is that correct?
Well, that's a good question. What you have to do, the Budget Act requires you to have, budgeted revenues, expenses not go over your revenues. And what we've done, the budget is it's a guide for us for how money is appropriated for us to operate our town. I can't write checks unless the council appropriates that money for me to write and pay our payroll, pay bills to run our town. If that's not appropriated, I can't write those checks. So what it does is me, staff, Deborah, Deborah's our CPA, some of y'all here who haven't been here, who's done a fantastic job for our town. And really, I'm so thankful we've got her. As a town, we're blessed to have her. And what we do is we come up and make the best estimation. We have all the department heads and some aldermen have come to these meetings. They're all invited to come to them and sit down with us, with department heads, and go over each one of their budgets, line item. We sit down and spend hours and hours and hours of meetings and come up on what they think they're going to need to run their department. Also, what we think we're going to, when we project how much we think we're going to have in hydro revenues, how much we think we're going to have in different things and costs of the year. It's a guide, like Mr. Nolan said. Nobody has a crystal ball. If they tell you they know what it's going to be, you need to run from them because they don't know. This is a guide for us to run our town. I really think the 2 years that we have done it, we've done a doggone good job of what we have put together and forecasting what. Now, have we hit it right? And I'll give you, for example, just here recently, this past budget, did we know we was going to get $200,000 from the DRA for we didn't know we was going to get that. You can't put that in a budget. But now that's come to light afterwards. We've been granted $200,000 for our gas pipeline. There's things that come up that you can't budget. You don't know they're going to come in. And that's why, and Rick will tell you, or anybody else that fools with budgets, especially with municipalities, they can be amended toward the end of the year to account for those changes. And it's a living, breathing thing that you have to deal with, different things that come up throughout the year, whether it's breakdowns or catastrophes that come up, that you have to spend monies to manage your town and make sure you're providing the services to the people. So this is a guide, and this is a very good guide. Now, you're going to see the revenues that we've got, and I was given the budget that we were given, adopted by the previous, and I keep bringing this up, and I know some of the people here really hate to hear this. The previous administration left us a budget with $4.9 million expenses over revenues, and it was voted on and adopted. And I have done nothing but fight to get a good budget approved, and here I've got $3 million in revenues over expenses. Now, that $3 million, $1.5 million of that is projected to be hydro royalties that this year we believe, because of the increase in the royalty thing, that we're going to be able to give the rebate this year. This past year, the rate was at 8%, and they didn't generate the way they should, and there wasn't a rebate. It killed me because I promised that, hey, look, if it's available, it's going to be paid to the people. It's not going to be spent. And this year, I'm looking for us to have $1.5 million to $1.6 million in revenues from that, and I'm not going to budget to spend those. That's why we got the overage. The other overage of that is the sale of to Vidalia Denim, through the Loon building. So that's the other monies that we're not going to spend it. Just because we got it, we're not going to spend it, or try not to unless something catastrophic happens. So that's what you're going to see, the overage that we got in the budget. So basically, operationally, we're pretty close. And that we don't take into consideration the monies that we're going to make on our new companies coming in. We feel like that's going to be substantial, y'all. That's going to give us more income. That when we do get down to where we can, as we continue to cut costs, and we're trying to still do that, that we can pass on those rate decreases to our people. That's our plan. That's it. It's simple. It's not that complicated. It's not that complicated. So, anyway, Destiny.
With Mr. Rinaldi on Facebook today, and it said that Natchez was looking to donate their visitor center to the federal government to get out of the liability and the expenditures that it was costing them each year. In the spirit of keeping costs low, is that an option for Vidalia or something that Vidalia would consider? Because we talked about it to keep our rates?
I think those are good points, Destiny. Look, I mean, again, the IT center was a done deal when we came in. I was able to populate the IT center. I think we were under obligation to pursue what the intent of it was. We didn't take on any new personnel to put down there. We managed with what we had, and other than just the cost of operating it, insurance and electricity, it hasn't been, we've been able to give it a chance to do what it's supposed to do. Am I ready to pull the plug on that option? I'm not ready yet at this point. There's still some things that we're talking about. We're having meetings, ongoing meetings on improving our utilities as far as upgrading our reading capabilities with all of our metering and improving those things, and that would be a very vital building for us to do that. However, I do agree with you. I mean, I'm disappointed that it has not, what it was built for, has not, as far as the, being a hub for, young entrepreneurs to come in that's real computer literate. Honestly, should we have ever done it? But I'm not going to go there because, we're looking at this in a college town. I feel like we have a lot of young men and women who are capable, and even older, who are very computer literate, that, but we've advertised it real strong. We've done everything we can. I do feel like, however, the convention center, I think there's some value there from a standpoint that it's worth some of the cost. Now, what that cost is, and that was one of Alderman Probst's question last week, and that's a legitimate question.
And I listened to you with an open heart and open mind when we discussed this last week. And one of the things that you said was that it was a great benefit to the people of Vidalia. But I want to point out that the people of Vidalia can still benefit from having the IT center and the conference center, even if the city of Vidalia does not own those two buildings and is not liable for the electric, the personnel, the insurance.
And, hey, look, I mean, it's something to be, but I just don't see the federal government stepping up and,
See, that's what I was asking, because someone said it wouldn't be an option because of the grants involved and also because it was possibly a FEMA shelter on the.
and that's, we have looked at that. I will say that the convention center is a Red Cross. It would be a Red Cross center. It's on the list. It's also there for us, even as a, like, for example, this past January when it was, we got the call that they were going to shed load, and maybe LEPA called us again. Y'all heard that story where I talked about they were going to, and I asked Mark when could they cut the power off for Vidalia because the grid was heating up. Everything was going to shut down all over the south, and he said 15 minutes. And I'm going like, are you kidding me? Some people would die, cold as it was.
Well,
And
I want to commend you for putting that on social media because I think that was a good way to have people sharing that and getting that information out to the public.
it was.
Help us reduce the load.
But I do want to say that, but by 8:30 or 9 o'clock, we had that convention center with generators ready to go in case our public, we lost power. We had a shelter there for people to come and live and survive because 14 and 10 degree sustained temperatures was what people would be, it'd be a question of life. So,
Does that affect the ability to sell it, the fact that it is? I mean,
it's something to be, I mean, we can look into it. I have no problem with this, exploring those possibilities. It's good questions. It's just, I guess, as more people, is it worth the 200,000+ that's probably going to wind up costing to have that to have meetings? I noticed last weekend, Concordia Bank and Trust had their Christmas party there, and it was probably 200 or 300 people in there. It looked like it was a wonderful place. There's nowhere else in Vidalia or even Concordia Parish that you can go and.
Well, again, they could still use that if the city wasn't liable for it. The
Wait.
building would still be there,
Yeah.
and citizens could still take advantage of it. But I saw that, it's $260,000 for personnel. How many people work?
There's 5 people. It's a manager, assistant man, just 5. You've got one that's in maintenance because that is a very big building. It's got a lot of maintenance involved. We also have one security person that's in that budget. It's Mr. Wedgeworth. He works the really busy hours from 4 to 12. He's there on the streets and as well. So he's in that budget as well. But and we have a receptionist and 2 other people. So that's it. And when we got here, it had 15.
Is it open or is it closed?
It's open.
I was confused because I read something in the paper, I guess, some months back that it was closed.
No, it's open now. And we've also, you know, we've, now the county agent's office is there and they're renting it on an annual basis. And so that's where their offices are since the courthouse closed. So we've looked at other avenues. And we're also looking at other things to increase the amenities within it that I think is going to really increase. I know I went to a wedding that was, you know, I walked in and I thought I was somewhere out of town at some kind of, you know, thing. It was really a beautiful place. Yeah, Dara, that's, you know which one I'm talking about, Dara? That was, and it would look, I was really amazed at how beautiful that place was and a venue that it provided for that event. And I was just amazed how gorgeous it was. And I think if we do that and do a better job of trying to get that out there, what we can do with it, I think we'll maybe shrink that down, maybe even more, maybe closer to 175 to 200,000.
One more idea that I have, because I know that the city of Vidalia, budget. Have you ever considered, cameras coming off the bridge?
Cameras coming off the bridge?
To take pictures of speeders. It could
That-
generate quite a bit of money for the city.
I'm just gonna make a comment. I'm gonna let Joey come in or leave. I would think anything to do with the bridge, Destiny, is really the DOT. Because, I mean, like, for example, look, it gets me when I go across and I see trash all the way across the bridge. I know residents go out, you know, DOT is very specific. They don't want us on the bridge working or doing anything. So putting cameras up on the bridge, that's something that I think they would probably have to address. Joey, do you want to comment to that, or?
I work for y'all, I do whatever y'all want me to do.
All right.
That's a fantastic answer.
Lee?
No, hold on. Chief, tell the citizens that we do have the ability to see the tags as they go across
We do have
This-
the tags going outside of the city. That's what I thought. I think with that DOT also, we don't want to put it on there. But I've been trying to get it to where we could before.
You know, that'd be good if somebody stole something, we could see it coming going out.
Timestamp, if it were timestamped.
You can't access the camera, you used to access the cameras that were on the bridge, and there's a lot more than you can see from the, DOT's website. But
You can see it if they get on.
Okay, all right. Is that all, Destiny? Ray?
Going back to the ITC, building, there was in this budget, is a $93,000 expenditure for extension of the the optic, fiber optic. I visited that building, and Bobby wasn't there, so he couldn't give me the answer to the question about, I was wondering, where is that, extension going to be? And also, what, will the citizens of Vidalia get out of that extension, particularly in any return of revenue? Maybe you can tell me where that is, what's it for, and that sort of thing.
Okay, Ray, best I can, you was asking what is the fiber optic network that Bobby's currently running around town is going to benefit?
Yeah.
Or how's it going to benefit? I can tell you one thing.
I understand that it was a venture some time ago before you left down in office, was that it could be kind of a moneymaker opportunity as well as service to citizens today.
That's a good question. I will say, not only could it potentially be a moneymaker in the long run, Ray, it's also been a money saver. Bobby's done it, and there's something else I'm really proud of all of our employees and our staff. I mean, we have really got the A-team. Bobby, since 2005, there's been a hard line to AT&T that has been run to one of our water wells or something somewhere. And since that time, we've been trying to really clean up because that looked like it was too much cost. And Bobby, by working with fiber and also running his fiber to different water wells and stuff, because those things, have to have communication. We've updated that. What was that one savings annual, Bobby, that we run, just that one line that we've been paying for since 2005, really wasn't it being in use?
There, you had the water well on the riverfront. I think the AT&T data line cost us a little over $3,000 a month, and it didn't work half the time. We replaced it with fiber, it cost us $12,000, so it's a full month payback.
And, so that's an idea.
And we're trying to do, in the process of doing the same thing with the substation, the sewer plant, in the process of getting to the water well. We also got to the utility department, the auto shop, the utility shop, and we've got them on our system now, so we're not having to pay AT&T for their U-Boats anymore.
That's relative to the extension right now that you, those sound like something you've already done.
Yes, I have already done that. We are gleaning savings from that at this time.
Well, my question is, the 93,000 is on the current budget, will that begin to generate something somewhere, and what is where? Not really, it's already
I think the majority of that, if I recall, is to build the fiber out to the port so that we'll have a phone system and internet capabilities out at the port. I don't think it's all that 93,000, but I think that's a large chunk.
Right.
good. With that in mind, is it possible that that figure, $93,000, would be a savings on this budget and place somewhere out there in the future, near the time that the port is supposed to be in operation?
Can I address that?
Sure, go ahead.
Not if you want to try to take advantage of existing labor that's being used, where it's going to cost us material instead of materials and labor. So if you have somebody that's going to be digging a hole, and I could say, if you put a pipe in there for me, I don't have to pay them to dig another hole. So, and labor is about 60% of your construction. So it's a big savings. The timing may not be exact sometimes, but if you don't take those opportunities, you end up costing yourself a lot more.
Do you expect that gas line to be done in this fiscal year?
Pardon?
And we do expect that gas line to be dug and laid in this fiscal period?
Yes. Okay, any other questions before we, yes, ma'am?
I have a tough question. Is there anything in our budget that's going to address our wastewater treatment facility and upgrades that might possibly be needed? I'm not sure that you're aware, but according to LPQ's EDMS system, pulled some reports that show the city is in violation for over a year of their LPES permits, and you're exceeding design capacity of 1.5 million gallons per day by usually 1.8 million is the intake. So with that in mind, I heard you say earlier that you're kicking the tires on some new businesses coming to town. So how can we support new businesses if we're already exceeding and in violation of that permit? Does the city plan to upgrade our wastewater treatment facility? Are we going to address that? Because we have, according to this report, a failure to maintain and properly operate all systems of treatment and control.
Mark, I don't recall that.
We are in compliance.
Pardon?
We are in compliance.
Okay.
I have the report. I can
Well,
get it.
all right.
I can bring that to you right now if you'd like to see it.
Destiny, look, that's off our budget. I mean, we're not, to answer your question, we're not planning on expending any funds on our wastewater treatment in this budget, no. Unless it's something to do with one of our sewer, our aerators. But to answer that, we're here tonight to get the answer on our budget. So we really need to move on to that. To answer your question is no, we're not planning on spending We don't have any money appropriated to spend on the sewer system this year, so. But I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and Mark says we're in compliance. He deals with this every day, been doing it for how many years, Mark? 40 years. So I mean, I'll be glad, again, I'll be.
Bring the report and let anyone see the report. If you want to see the report, come to me after. I'm happy.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Mr. Tom, how many people work at the IT center?
How many people?
Yeah, how many employees we have down there?
I think there's 3 IT guys,
There are?
and then you got
Do
a
we need
secretary.
3 IT guys?
What'd you
That should come off the budget.
What'd you say, Martha?
I said, do we need 3 IT guys down there?
Do we know, that's his day-to-day operation.
That can come off the budget.
That's his day-to-day operation.
Oh, okay, all right.
Would you like to see it as a citizen,
Okay.
Martha? Would you like to see it come off the budget?
No, not if they're utilized.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. All right. I don't. All right. All right. Okay. Any other questions? We need.
I'll go back to a reference on that though, Martha, go back to exactly what you had told us, the non-essential things are what needs to go first. Is that what you did state that at one point? In most cases, that's what you have to look at, not public safety, as you made that point. Remember when we were talking the first time?
What's your point?
Previously.
I mean, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
What's your point in asking?
All right. Order.
What's the point?
Right, that, again,
Order.
there.
I order. Hey, please, y'all.
But I go back to what he said, and
Look,
I go
please, go.
I go back to what I said in that statement. It's not my opportunity as a alderman to deal with that on the day-to-day operation. As I stated in several meetings, it's what he feels is important, is in his opinion, but it's in our opinion how much money you give him to operate this town on is what our job is, along with policies and procedures.
Well, you know, Tommy, I'm just sitting here listening to you talk, and, you know, a lot of us back here keep wondering why, you know, every other word you say is I. So it's like, you're sitting up there defending things that have no defense or need no defense.
I don't have to, I say I don't have that as an alderman.
Okay.
Martha, I don't have that as an alderman. That's not our job, day-to-day operation.
All right, let's move on to it. Let's move on. Any other public comment on the budget before we move on and close this? Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion? We close public hearing.
I make that motion.
Motion made by Alderman Gardner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Betts. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Okay. Now we're to number 4, the board consideration of the ordinance of adopting our operating budget of revenues and expenses for the town of Vidalia for the fiscal year 2018-19. Do I hear a motion that we,
Make a motion we accept the budget.
motion made by Alderman Betts. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Gardner.
Now we
Okay,
discuss.
now we're into discussion of our budget. Any discussion? Now, again, this is just for the, we've had our public comment. Now, the council's going to, other than staff, I'm going to ask Mr. Nollins if any other comment or any department head for the town to respond if they're asked questions. So at this time, here we go. Any questions from the council?
One of the things that was said with regards to the reduction in revenues on the electric side was that those would be realized by residential customers only. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
I don't think that's completely correct.
That was-
This
Excuse me,
residential, commercial.
Yeah, that was the primary purpose. We also looked at the small commercial to see if we couldn't do something, but on a much smaller scale there. Yeah, but the main focus was, first priority was the residential electric service.
I would like to see us within this budget reduce our revenues by an additional $500,000 so that the businesses in Vidalia could also see a substantial benefit from electric rates. And the reason for that is, as we're courting new businesses to come in, which I agree, a great job has been done, we don't really have any incentive for the businesses that are still here. And our economy is suffering so much so that we need the new businesses to come in. And I think it would also show good faith to the businesses that are currently located here that we show them a little bit of an economic break as well. So that's one thing that I would like you, Mayor, to consider is an additional $500,000 reduction in revenues that can be applied to the electric rates of all businesses.
I appreciate that, but the 1.6 cents that Mr. Nollins is alluding to, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that applies to the commercial. They get in the same as the residential, that 1.6, which was in the power, which affects the power cost adjustment, that 1.6 cents. So in essence, the commercial is getting.
Well, the power cost portion of the total bill is across, yeah. When I said we're focusing on the residential, we're particularly with the base rates, to lower the base rates. So there'll be some benefits, for part of it to the other customers, but yeah.
So they're getting the same, the commercial's getting the same break as the individual, as the residential. They're getting the same amount of savings.
Okay. And how much of a, how much of a burden would it put on the town if instead of only giving, down to what'd you say, 10.2 effectively on average? If we went down a little bit farther?
I just said that was mine at this time.
Because,
I mean,
and the reason that I say that is because, we do have these new businesses that we're hopeful that come in, and we are excited about that. And my only reason for saying a reduction in revenues so that we can apply that is that Vidalia can become the attractive place to live for those people who may be hired by those companies. Some of those individuals will have to move into our area, and I think it would be a great benefit if they chose to live inside of the city limits of Vidalia. So my way of thinking with that is that if we can become even more attractive by way of even lower electric bills than you've already given the town, which thank you, by the way, for doing, I think that would help to fill up some of our homes and fill up, and we would get more money from the revenue from the new customers.
Well, I mean, I can address it. I think right now homes are beginning to move. We're seeing movement with new business coming into town now. And to go in and say, can we cut another 500,000? Not without going into, I mean, I don't have 500 more thousand I can go in and pull out and say that we can cut. I mean, we've been doing cuts. Like I said, we have been progressively, safely doing consistent decreases in our budget, and I'll be glad to show it to you. We have tracked this budget down, and we're going to continue to try to do it. But to come in and do drastic things that's going to put a burden on us having, I can tell you 500,000 would be way too drastic of a cut, and when I see that things are starting to heat up now as far as what we've done, the work we've done. And yeah,
I don't know if I'm eligible to comment.
well, you're the city manager. Yeah, you can comment.
My comment on that with city manager is I think we can get there. But to me, the better way is to, when we start reaping benefit from these companies when they go into business and they're using power and our revenues increase, we can pass that on. It'd be better to pass it on than we have funds instead of trying to operate. We're going to be with what's being proposed, we're going to be really tight on running the town as is. When that revenue comes, I think we need to take strong consideration into using all of that to lower things even more. Also, one thing we've never forget, and this is a family thing, but the hydro revenue and the rebates, it is to make electric costs cheaper here. As far as people moving here and wanting to live here, that is going to be a major thing real soon. And when that check comes, that rebate check comes, that is something to look at. Is that, if you factor that by 12 and take it off your electric bill, that's pretty much what you do. Because it is for our benefit of electric power savings or revenue.
Okay.
So I think we need to look at right now, but as we go forward, I think the point is that we can probably even do more. We won't be cheaper than anywhere else, but we're going to end up being factor in the hydro rebates in addition to what the rates would be. And we probably can lower it more as the revenue from these companies comes in, especially if they understanding level of everything. That's the first time it's ever mattered.
Well, and that's one of the things, we have discussed that in staff meetings, that, you know, once these businesses do come up and get operational, what do we do with that extra income that's gonna be given to the town? And I've said it, and I've been saying it, is at that point, then we can look at really, you know, making, you know, more reductions too, to give back to the people that are existing now, that have shouldered the load for so long. But we've turned this thing around, y'all. We're headed in the right direction. And, you know, I think that people you know, people want to come to Vidalia, our school systems, our, you know, again, our safety, our public safety, our amenities that we do have, you know, and for us to be able to have this, I think we're blessed. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm excited for our town. And I just want to stop, we done went to, it's something that we really, really, really should be thankful for. And I promise you that we are working real hard to get those costs down, and we'll work even harder. It's taking time. You know what? Somebody told me, it's going to take you a full term to get things where you want to go. I think we've done pretty good in a little over 2 years. So, any other questions from the council? Rick, go ahead.
May I make a comment? Yeah. Mr. Dore's point is well taken, but I'm sorry to tell you this, but within the next 4 or 5 months, you're going to be going through this again for the next fiscal year, and that might be a better time to address it. We will have had 4 or 5 months of operations under the rate ordinance, the rates that are baked into this, and hopefully you'll adopt very soon. And then, from what I'm told, there's not a lot of fat in the budget, and if your new budget for fiscal 19-20 is to be adopted in May or June of next year, it may take that long to kind of see how things shake out on the thing. It's your decision what you do, but certainly, if nothing's done tonight on it, we could look at it at that time. My recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Nollins, I think you're a great guy. I want you to know that. And you just happen to be in a bad business of having to tell people what they don't want to hear about how to live in these small municipalities. And truly, you look at a town our size, and the amount of things that we offer. And the word amenities was thrown out earlier, and
it's impressive.
It is, isn't it? And the people these are good, hard-working people, and they probably deserve the best package that we can give them from the door, straight out. Let's go back and fix it a little later. We know that this is just a guide, but be honest with the people and say, you say it for me because you could probably say it better and it'd be received a little better by the mayor, that this city that does so much that you are impressed by, and being from Natchitoches Parish, and I spent 5 years in Natchitoches, a long time for me, and I thought it was some of the greatest things that I saw, this time of year especially. If you go to our riverfront, you'll see where we try to emulate a little Natchitoches on that. Tell the truth. We're trying to do a lot in this little town, and most of it can't ever be paid for. We can't ever just really match up if we don't go ahead and bite the bullet somewhere real soon. We got, go ahead. It'll be received better if it comes from you than me.
Well, and I hear what you say. Excuse me, Mr. McCoy, what it boils down to is Vidalia is truly a city on the move. You have things and you do things that cities the size of Natchitoches, which is, their rates are considerably less than the residential and small commercial, but there's certain economies of scale in serving them, and it makes sense to do that because of job creation and all the other things you know about. My concern is and I'm not here to debate the budget with you, but if you cut $500,000 out, then you have to, the next question say is, where's it coming from? Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's one I can't answer for you, you know?
Well, you did. You did. You said that the convention center, from a businessman perspective, and you were just speaking generally last time, from the perspective of a businessman, You couldn't have a business that lost money every year like we see happen with the convention center. And then we all agree that we'll bite that bullet because the convention center is a good draw.
It is.
And at some point, if it's marketed right, we'll get good use out of it.
Well, you know, Councilman, excuse me, Mayor, one more.
Sure.
When we're talking about extra revenues before, people automatically assume you're talking about taxes. That's not the only way you get extra revenues.
Right.
You know, it may be through greater utilization of your convention center. It may be through some other operational efficiencies. I don't know. Again, that's a little bit beyond what I was looking at.
Well, the mayor said he was handed two empty buildings, two buildings. Well, to me, that sounds like opportunity. And if we get that marketing thing together and get that convention center going, that wouldn't be, the break-even conversation would be okay then. Let's get away from it making money, it's just the break-even conversation. And truly, I think that's an opportunity, two brand-new buildings. We had a building down on DA Big Lane, and we sold it. It was ours. It was all ours.
What building you talking about?
The Fruit Loom building, isn't it?
That's on DA Big Lane.
Well, you know, the Industrial Park Road. We sold that, and we still haven't addressed the question about the $8 million that somebody else is managing for us. Now, I know those things happen, but this board knows nothing about it. And
Neither do I.
okay.
That's not.
It came out inadvertently. It came out the other day at the last meeting that somebody else was managing that much money for the town. But there should be transparency with us. Somebody should tell us something. The mayor said he wouldn't change a thing about the way he went to business in getting Project Blue, which was Project Blue, which is still is Project Blue. And I don't know if any of the five could tell you anything at this point about what Project Blue, I don't know if any of these people really know what Project Blue is. The mayor told us last week that if certain benchmarks are not met, then they'll be penalized. Project Blue hadn't met a benchmark or done anything that they said they were going to do since its inception. The mayor wants to make no concessions. You heard Alderwoman ask for $500,000. He don't want to make any concessions. At what point will we have to bite the bullet and do something drastic and not let it be on the hourly employees that need their checks, that need their jobs? Go ahead and tell
Well,
them.
no, Mr. McCoy, I appreciate your passion. That's not really something that I'm here to address.
Well, that's what we thought that you were for.
Well,
That's what that was the understanding that we were given, that you were going to tell us a better way, and that's why I say you're a great guy that have to do a bad job.
Can I make a comment?
We were told that you were the guy, the man. Have you been paid yet?
I haven't submitted a bill yet.
Okay. I was just verifying the question that was asked last week. You happen to be a good guy that has to do a bad job. And the mayor does not want to hear anything about concessions or backing off a little something to do a little something else or trading off anything to do something like, but he will tell us, go ahead and approve this and then we'll work on it on the back end. That's his thing. And we get down to crunch time. Man, he should have been presenting this thing every month since he didn't. He did not. This thing should have been poked at us. Let's do, this is gonna happen. We've been spending like we got it though. He ain't never stopped writing checks. He has not had the authority of anybody to do anything other than what he's done, and that's whatever he wants to do. He's consistently done that. And now we down to crunch time, and gonna force feed this budget down the boards, and you have one, two that have openly said they got some, they want the mayor to make some concessions on something.
Mr. McCoy, I understand what you're saying, but those debates and issues have to be addressed right here among yourselves.
Now you're telling us how we ought to do the thing, and that's right. We haven't had an opportunity to do it at all. Our debates are not debates. They're threats. They're threats about what could happen and just doomsday, doom and gloom from the mayor. He has not, since the two budgets that I didn't even feel like we were putting pressure on him to even chop anything or do anything. We voted for him. But it was made clear to him that unless you make some concessions somewhere, these people are not gonna vote for it. This board will not vote for a budget. Here we are tonight with a stacked room expecting us to go ahead and pass it because it's crunch time. And at some point, somebody got to get something that feels good to the citizens, that feels good to the employees, that feels good to everybody in this room. Somebody got to back off something. And at this point, before we even, man, look, thank you. I appreciate you. The young lady that you brought with you, I'm with you. I'm sorry that she has to see this is what dysfunction is right here. This is dysfunction at its greatest level. This is dysfunction at its greatest level, that we cannot get anything accomplished. We have not been able to get anything accomplished.
No. I'd like to address Mr. McCoy's comments, okay? Number one, he said he wasn't aware of $8 million. Mr. McCoy, were you not at the meeting where you approved that? And it was drawn out, was it not approved in meeting? And it was given to you in a packet, and you looked over it and you voted on it. Do you remember that or no?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Did you read your packet?
I did.
You did
I
read
did.
it? So you don't remember it?
I don't
Okay.
remember.
All right, now, you've also said that you keep talking about the budget. Now, how many meetings did you come to with department heads? And I'm going to, since you make an accusation.
I'm telling the truth.
Now,
I'm
how
not
many,
making
how
an
many
accusation.
meetings did you come to with us that you were invited to?
I haven't, not one meeting with you. Not one.
You have any with department heads? Mark, have you seen him at your department discussing?
Well, Brother Staggs, how often do I talk to you? Okay. Mark, when you were approachable, when I could talk to you, yeah, you know, when oh, yeah, I know it. Well, you know, I called you when we had the issue about the salt. You don't have to admit to that tonight. I know you don't want to remember that. We had the issue about the salt and our payment on the salt. And I called you and I said, we got a problem? And you said, no, I just want to get along with these people. I don't want any problems, so we're okay. And
Are you talking about the salt bill not getting paid?
that one. And we didn't have,
Well, that happened. We got paid, we got the salt.
yeah. But after that point, we hadn't been able to talk.
I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, because you said you didn't want to get in, and you know he and I, we're not the best of friends. We're not the best of friends, so you didn't want to talk to me anymore. And I understand that. Just like the morning I came to your department and I talked to the mechanics, and the mayor shows up and he tells the guys who are concerned about a policy manual that we were told it's good. We'll vote for it if you fix it. We said that. It's never been brought back to us fixed. So we're gonna treat the budget like we do the policy manual. We're gonna go ahead and vote for it, and then you'll come back and fix it.
You talking about employee manual, Alderman McCoy? You talking about policy manual? There's two.
Both of them. We had questions about both of them.
Okay. I was glad to see you show up, but also you
Yeah, I
also
was glad
showed
to
up.
be here.
You showed up at 7 o'clock, and it was you'd been talking to them, I guess, for what 30, 40 minutes.
You know
and they needed
exactly
to
how
work.
long I've been down there. You know.
I mean,
You know exactly how long I've been down there.
and I mean, anyway, but I would, all I can say is
It's all good. Everything is good, but you've already heard two aldermen say that they need you to make some concessions before they approve the budget.
Alderman McCoy, I think the $5 million that we've worked hard to lower and work hard to do, that we've called on departments to cut and don't spend, we've made concessions. We have done it, and look.
All I'm saying, you've
what-
heard two aldermen say that there's some concessions that they want in this budget before they approve it.
Okay, okay, all right. So Ms. Dorey wants 500, I mean, hey, if you want to,
There may be a happy medium somewhere between 500,000 and something else, but you got to at least consider it. You got to at least talk. Alderman Probst said there's a couple things that he just has to have unless, I mean, he has to have it done before he'll vote for anything.
okay, so you're going to, y'all, all right, what's the concessions? All right, y'all go and set it, and then we'll, I mean,
But we're gonna talk about it, Bud.
Yeah.
Mayor Kraft, we're gonna talk about it, but
you can call me Buzz, I don't mind, Tommy.
I'm gonna call you Mayor Kraft,
Yeah, I don't mind if you call me
respectfully.
Bud.
And I mean, I'm just gonna say that because I don't wanna do that, but the key is, like he's talking about, discuss it. We didn't discuss anything. I like the way, as I know a lot of y'all are here because we go back to Facebook, which you need to remember, employees are not supposed to be on Facebook, correct? As a means of communication concerning the city, correct? That's policy. That's a policy. Now, and we need to deal with those things as we deal with other employees. Not to be ugly, but just to say, let's do equal across the board. Now,
Okay.
I'm gonna bring this one up because this is not only a budget along with a budget item, this is a ordinance and a procedure that we have to put in place that's in place that I've been asking for 2 years, and you know it. We've been discussing this for a long, 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 long time.
Okay.
As to an ordinance that's in place that's not being fulfilled. And this ordinance concerns what I've got in my hand, which is Article 2.
Which is?
Dogs, how they are to be handled in our city as an ordinance. I've asked and asked and asked and asked about that. I've asked and I gave you a solution as per our police chief last week. We've had how many discussions, Joey? How many? Numerous discussions. I've been in your office, correct? Talking about what we would do.
No, no,
Do you,
no,
would you like to present your plan, Joey, that we discussed about what we thought would work? And can you also expound on the hindrances that you have due to the fact that you're not able to do some of your job?
I just said I was willing to take over the dog pound if need be. We have trouble having room for dogs to pick them up at the dog pound because some of them have been down there for quite a while.
Can you name how long?
It's, I don't know.
More than 7 days.
That's right.
What does the ordinance state, Joey?
My dog would be dead if that was an ordinance.
Again, Joey, go ahead and expound, and please, Buzz, will you please control your crowd? We're talking about this.
this is citizens' crowd, Tommy, it ain't my crowd, it's people over there. No, go ahead.
Don't make the orders, all we do is follow.
There you go.
If we want to have a shelter, so be it, let's have a shelter. It needs to be in the policy, so we can follow it. If we don't have.
Can we stop that clapping stuff so we can continue our discussion? And Mr. Wedworth, can you
Please.
control the crowd a
Please.
little more than we have in the past? Because this is really distracting to him talking, and all this clapping is not doing a